So most of us have probably watched a movie or two on an airplane at some point. And at least for me, the most important thing is always whether the resolution is good and whether the in-flight entertainment system is even working. I at least never really put a lot of thought into how much work goes in to getting a movie from the studio to the airplane. And it is so much more extensive than you think. So today I've come to Los Angeles, California to find out what kind of work actually has to go into making a movie compatible with playing it on an airplane, and find out a lot more about the content that you'll find on in-flight entertainment systems. Today I'll dive into a topic that I never thought I'd make a video about, and I'm sure you never thought you'd watch a video about: airplane in-flight entertainment content sourcing. It's a lot more interesting than it sounds, so let me take you along.
We're at Sunset Gower Studios, where a company called Spafax has their offices. Spafax is basically who airlines buy their movies and TV shows from, and the company's senior VP of Technical Services shows off right off the bat that some things aren't yet as modern as you think.
So this is right here a Hi8 video cassette. Looks a little bit like a tape cassette you'd put in your car back in the 1980s. Hi, I'm Arthur, SVP Technical Services for Spafax The Hub. Spafax supplies IFE content to airlines today, but this is what was actually flying on aircraft. As you can see, we have about 30 systems here, and we could duplicate all 30 at once, and that's the idea of these rooms. This is when airlines were only taking cassette. It was a massive operation. Today, everything's sent digitally via secure transfer over the internet.
But you still physically mail these?
These tapes still get physically mailed today, so we do have a shipping area that we will package these and ship them off to the airlines. Today though, for more modern aircraft, we actually do that digitally. So we'll go next door to the edit room and we'll take a look at how that's done.
So one of the main things a content provider such as Spafax does is it takes the movies and TV shows from the studios and turns them into something the airline can display. And that includes editing it, both in terms of content as well as the file format itself, which, if you ever had to convert video files into very specific video codecs, you know can be a hell of a headache on its own.
So this room right here, we're going to take you into Edit Bay 1. This is our primary edit room, and inside we've got our editor Young working on a title now. After our editing team is done and we have what we call a production ready asset, this has the video we want, the audio tracks we need, and the subtitle tracks we need. We're ready to create that deliverable format. This is the format that's going to go on the system flying on the aircraft. We've got a team of VOD engineers and technicians. They take those master assets, they encode them into the right file format, and mux them with all the components they need, and we digitally transfer that over to the in-flight entertainment system manufacturer, and we actually have multiple file formats we have to target. It's not just your current state-of-the-art MPEG-4, H.264, H.265. We're also encoding to older specs, MPEG-1 transport stream, and that's just the nature of this industry. So in order to keep those old systems flying, we supply all of those different formats, just like the tape you saw in the other room. So when we get content in from the studios, these are usually high-res mezzanine level files. These are very large files. If you look at a 4K piece of content, you're talking potentially 20 terabytes. That's not what's making it on board. There's a lot of steps where we take that down to a file spec that works for the airline system. Most of the systems and most of the content you see flying today is usually SD or low HD resolution, quite a bit smaller. And each system that's flying has got a slightly different specification. So it's not as easy as you'll find in your home media market, where one file can typically work across multiple video players. We actually might create 5 or 6 versions of the same title to hit 5 or 6 different IFE systems flying today. File sizes for those can range anywhere from 1 gig to 500 megabits. Just depends on what's required from that system.
How much data can you actually load onto current IFE systems?
It really depends on the aircraft, however, and the airline and what system's flying. Majority of the newer systems that are coming out can store up to 10, 15, 20 terabytes worth of data, and that equals hundreds, if not thousands of titles that you can have flying. Older systems that have been on board for a while that you might find quite a bit smaller, 1 terabyte, 2 terabytes worth. The content we're displaying is usually SD, so it's a smaller file size, which allows them to put quite a bit more pieces of content on board. However, with newer systems flying, they want higher resolution, better looking content. That just means larger file sizes, so that hard drive's got to grow with it.
And what kind of editing do you do content-wise? Are the movies on planes not the same as on the ground?
So once we know we have a good asset, then we got to start working on whether or not we need to create an edited version. Really depends on the airline that's taking it. Most airlines today, especially US-based carriers, are taking the theatrical version. There's no need to do an edit. However, a lot of international airlines still want an edit, and sometimes that edit may differ from airline to airline. Sometimes airlines require their own version of the film. This could be due to cultural requirements, cultural differences, certain things they may or may not want their customers to see on board. Some airlines are a little more strict on language or nudity, where others might focus on some sort of political statement or content. So we get those notes in, and we have to create that here at the hub.
And once it's ready, then do you just like email it to airlines?
So not necessarily the airline themselves, but the manufacturer that made that system for that aircraft. And a lot of times the same title will go to multiple different in-flight system manufacturers. We call them integrators. Because that airline's got more than one system flying. For example, American Airlines has got 2 or 3 different systems flying from two or three different manufacturers. Not only do you have those seatback systems, you have stream to your own personal device systems that are flying on board. You may think that might be streaming from the ground. That's not. That's also streaming from a server somewhere on the aircraft, either in the electronics bay or maybe an overhead bin. Those systems sometimes have their own unique specification as well. So we cover the gamut. We probably target, 30 plus systems that we can deliver to today. And so those integrators may or may not, when they go to load the aircraft on behalf of the airline, sneaker net it on and plug in a USB stick or a physical hard drive to do that content load. Or what we're seeing today in today's industry is at the gate wireless loading over Wi-Fi or 5G networks. So that's happening now. And even further and beyond that is we do have satellite connectivity. You're starting to find that on board for content load. Now, we aren't going to content load 20 terabytes of data over satellite, but ad hoc loading can happen if needed, if a title needs to be replaced due to some error that was found. A lot of the newer systems can do that today. So all of that content, right, you're probably wondering how long does it actually stay on board? It really depends on those licensing deals and those agreements. Most content will be on there for a few months up to a full year. Sometimes content will get refreshed and they'll only have a license for 1 month. As far as what's really the most popular type of content, really it's comedy. People want to laugh, people want to have a good time. They're going somewhere fun, they're going on a trip, they want to bring that joy and get into that mood. So, and one of the ones that we constantly get asked for is the box set of Friends or The Office. A lot of airlines want to have that available and want to keep that flying as much as they can. Now, as far as how and what is chosen, how does an airline decide what goes on board? Is it an individual title or a package of titles? It's gonna be a combination of working with the airline themselves. They're gonna have an idea of what titles they want on a certain route. So for example, you've got a route going into Japan. That airline may say, we want to focus on titles that offer Japanese languages or Japanese focused content. Our content acquisition and our licensing team will work with the airlines to determine what's best for that airline and what's best for the studio so that they can get the right amount of content flying.
And all that put together, it's not cheap. For major international carriers with large long-haul networks, it can be in the millions of dollars a year just for the content itself. So I'm sure the airline wants to get the best possible selection of content for their customers out of this massive cost. But how do you narrow down like all of the movies to just a couple of dozen you'll play on a plane?
That's where Spafax as a CSP comes in. We have a great group of content curators, and they're helping to determine not just the Hollywood blockbusters, which the airline personnel and the folks are probably going to know about, but it's also those international world movies or those smaller titles that are indie film that they've actually gone out, researched, reviewed, and know what the airline is looking for typically for their customers, and if not, generate new content categories that they can display on board and advertise. So,
does the airline know what people are watching in detail?
Yeah, they do to an extent, right? They can grab this data. It's provided to them from both the system integrator and as well as the metadata that we provide on about what's playing on board, and they'll collate that data. Spafax offers a set of tools and analytics platform through what we call Spafax One, where we can consolidate that information into a dashboard and provide some better analytics to the airline about who's watching when on an east to west route, on a long haul route, on a short haul route, and provide them with more data about how do they surface the right amount of content to that customer.
Now, one thing I've noticed over and over is that on some movies and TV shows, the airline name constantly pops up. What's up with that?
This is part of the security requirements of the studio distributor. Not every title requires it. Most of the major studios do want something. Sometimes it might be the airline code in the lower corner. Sometimes it's the full name across the middle of the screen. Pops up every 12, 15, 20 minutes for about 7 seconds. And really that's just a security requirement for the studio.
So that it doesn't get stolen along the way.
Yeah, the idea is that if it gets pirated, they can at least start to track down where that title may have come from.
Studios are extremely careful when it comes to handling their original files, and even more so when it comes to unreleased titles. Arthur talked about how their edit rooms are air-gapped. Air-gapping is basically the ultimate way to protect against hacking, and it's the most basic thing imaginable. Just don't have the computer connected to any network, meaning there is a gap of air between this edit room and the rest of the world. You want to bring something in or out, you gotta scan like half a dozen IDs and key cards from outside to get into the studio area, the building, and the room, and then you have to use a hard drive. No way it can be hacked. And that's how lots of things in Hollywood work these days. And movies often are making it quite quickly onto planes right after they were in cinemas, although that's changing a bit too.
These release windows have changed. Historically, you would find new titles on aircraft immediately after it was in the theaters. That's being pushed a little bit as that title makes its way onto a studio's direct-to-consumer platform. But on occasion, that still does happen. And so studios want to ensure that they're hitting the right target market and the right window that's best for that title.
But Netflix, for example, isn't one of them, right? Because I've never come across any Netflix content on planes.
As far as I know, and from what I understand, Netflix wants to drive their customers to their product and their platform, so I don't believe they're currently licensing anything in the in-flight entertainment industry. But who's to say they may make a change in the future? No idea.
As you can see, getting movies and TV shows from the studios onto an aircraft is a mammoth task on its own, and is just a little puzzle piece to what modern air travel is like these days. If you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments, and we might get to dive a bit deeper into other aspects of modern air travel as well. As always, special thanks to all those of you who continuously support us with paid channel memberships, which help us get better at what we do and also occasionally experiment with new types of videos like today. If you want to support us as well, simply click on the join button beneath this video or on our channel page, where the lowest tier starts at just €2 per month, which is just €24 per year. Whether you are a channel sponsor, a subscriber, or simply stopping by for this one video, thank you very much for watching. If you're curious about another aspect of air travel, namely how the seats are made, take a look at this video where we dive into the high-tech production of German airplane seat maker Recaro.